Would you like to step in the queue, pull your number
Mm-hmm.
from the deli line, and wait until we can slice your mortadella? No, I'd like to get my question answered right now, actually.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your no-fluff guide to artificial intelligence in higher ed. I'm Mallory Willsea, bringing nearly 20 years of edtech and marketing expertise straight to your earbuds. Higher ed leaders are expected to master AI overnight, but let's be real, no one has time to sift through every headline, hot take, or research report. That's why every Monday I'll break down what actually matters, fast, clear, and to the point. Want to sound like the smartest person in the room at your next team meeting? You're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Higher Ed Pulse. On today's episode, first came the ChatGPT panic. Now we're swiping right on AI assistants. Business schools are teaching them, colleges are partnering with them, and students are confessing things to bots they never say out loud. Higher Ed is in a full-on situationship with AI, and it's getting serious. Today's guest is someone who's living at the intersection of innovation and enrollment. Kelly Sinacola, Vice President of Solution Engineering and Integration at Element 451. She was just recognized by ASU+GSV as one of the leading women in AI, and she's bringing the receipts on what's working, what's next, and what we need to watch out for. Kelly, welcome to the Pulse. First off, congrats on being named one of the leading women in AI. That's kind of a big deal. What was that moment like for you?
Oh, thank you so much. It was shocking. It was actually artists let me know on our
Wow.
one-on-one, and he was just like, "Have you heard something today?" I was like, what was I supposed to have heard? I thought it was, being a negative Nancy. What bad thing have we heard today? He's like, "No, it's exciting." I'm like, "You're gonna have to give me more." So that was shocking, exciting, but yeah, it was really cool to be recognized in that way, especially with most of my career focused on sort of the old, archaic, outdated parts that live under the surface of higher ed and the SIS systems. So it's fun to now be associated with the new, cool, up and coming parts too.
That's amazing. And you're headed to the AI show and the summit this weekend, right?
Yeah, super excited. It's San Diego but it's also my first ASU GSV. So super excited to see what it's all about.
Awesome. I loved the AI show last year. There was just so much great energy on the floor. Bill Nye had a session. I think you're just going to absolutely enjoy it. And so best of luck. But folks, let's jump into this AI glow up that seems to be happening across campuses. So here, we've got two articles for you. They're both linked in the show notes. Now, in one corner, we've got business schools integrating AI into their coursework. And it's not just to check the tech trend box, but because employers are now expecting graduates to be AI literate. Financial Times dropped an article this month detailing how professors at the University of Toronto's Rotman School of Management are using bots to answer student questions instantly, even the ones that might feel too awkward to ask out loud in class, which we are definitely going to double click on soon. And I think what started as maybe a panic over cheating is turning into a serious shift in how students are learning and interacting and getting job ready. And then in the other corner, we've got Champlain College in Vermont. They just partnered with Anthropic. Yes, those are the folks behind Claude to embed AI across their academic and student experience. But the focus isn't just on the tech. It's on responsible AI, teaching students when to use it, why it matters, and how to stay human in the loop. So there you go. You don't need to read the articles. That's the sound bites. And today, Kelly and I are unpacking what all this means for higher education and what seems to be the start of a big shift, at least on the teaching and learning side, from resisting AI to rethinking everything around it. Kelly, do you think that these two institutions are outliers, or are they signaling actually a bigger shift happening in the industry, especially for faculty?
Yes, I think on the teaching and learning side, we're finally starting to see that shift where we aren't doing the, oh, let's make sure it's going to pass your turn it in flags, right? We're actually using it in the teaching and learning space which is really important because we're not seeing that trend happen yet, is in the K to 12 market. So I have two preteens at home and they're being told not to use these tools instead of being told how to use them responsibly. So unfortunately, once you get into your undergrad, it's so late and you're just continuing to fall behind. I had my son telling me about everything that's bad about AI as a 13-year-old, and I was like, okay, kid, I'm gonna have to sit down. We're gonna have this conversation right now about where you're getting these opinions and how we can start to tone them down. And that's why it's so important to see these undergrad institutions, these graduate institutions adopt it. And I started to see that shift before I left higher ed services, where I was talking to some of the really up and coming schools, kings of architecture, kings of art, and saying, let's embrace it into the program. It's nice to see the rest of the schools start to come up in these areas as well. I think it's showing a shift. It's showing that we aren't scared anymore. So let's back away from the FUD and really lean into how we can benefit our students.
Well, listeners on of the Pulse over the last year have heard me and Seth Odell kind of complain that, a lot of the attention on the teaching and learning side has been around using AI to prevent people from using AI. And not actually focusing on that kind of career ready preparedness. And we both talked about how we want to hire people who are AI literate. But for the past 3 years, higher ed has been so focused on blocking tools for students that we're not building the skill set. So Kelly, let's dig into that. What does it actually mean to graduate AI literate students? Because I think it has to be more than just knowing how to prompt ChatGPT. And do you think institutions are actually ready for that?
That's really the question, right? So I don't think that schools are fully ready to graduate AI literate students. I think that's going to take a lot more pulling back the rings and layers of the onion. So there's a lot of resistance still on campus to AI. I was talking with a campus leader just this week, and he was saying, oh, well, I'm really nervous about training models because that goes against my security policy. It's like, okay, so if we're even getting resistance on the AI security front, how are we going to be able to have faculty bring in and teach literacy and competence when they can't even access the tools because it's being blocked by IT? So I think the first step is AI literacy amongst the faculty and staff at these institutions so that it can spread organically to the students. And I know that you and I have seen that a lot, Mallory, when we're just talking about using just a prompt to write marketing materials. And that's such a good way to easily gain a lot of efficiency in the workplace supporting higher education institutions. But so many schools are just like, don't even log in. So we need to make sure that we're teaching and having these webinars and giving educational opportunities to the faculty and staff that support higher educational institutions so they can grow in this literacy, grow in comfort to get over that FUD and be able to move the students forward too.
Yeah. So the other thing in the Financial Times article that jumped out to me is that one professor said students are asking the AI assistant questions that they'd be too embarrassed to ask in class, which I was like, it was a full flashback for me to the days when I was on a campus as an admission counselor and had deployed this anonymous tool. I actually talked to Day on Talking Tactics about this, I think like a year and a half ago, because I had unlocked this insight that students on a tour didn't want to ask if they had to bring their own toilet paper when they were a freshman, right? They were too embarrassed. Yet that was the number one question we would get in that anonymous Q&A tool. So clearly, right, current students are still like, you have those feelings around your peers. Like you are embarrassed to ask questions sometimes. And I think that, that's a skill you learn over time that a lot of 18 to 21-year-olds just haven't built yet. So how interesting that there's an opportunity for AI to change the dynamic here. Do you think that this is going to be a good use case for maybe those professors who are a little more resistant? And how do you see this changing the dynamic in the learning process?
Yes. And I had that same flashback moment where I flashed back to being an undergrad actually. It was like, I was going into my undergrad years from being a homeschooled student. So there was all sorts of awkward questions I had to ask, especially being away from home as a resident student for the first time. So I think that this anonymization of not having to someone know who I am. And we saw that earlier on a decade ago in live chats where people didn't have to say who they were. You were still interacting with a live human being, but we got those weird questions. I manned those live chats
I
myself.
did too.
The most random questions, most easily Googleable, but sometimes they just need to talk it out. So I see, oh, that made complete sense to me. And I would have totally chatted up a bot when I was in my undergrad, or who am I kidding? Even my graduate school days too.
I'd chat it up right now. Let's be
I
real.
mean, I was having a full-on conversation with ChatGPT this morning, so I can't think I would do it today. And so I think that that's really important. And now that we have the tools that we can record that, flag things like sentiment, flag things like self-harm, I think it's going to be really important in the mental health space too, because you don't, unfortunately, especially with everything that's changing in higher ed today, it would be tone deaf to not mention those things. We don't have as much staff as we used to, and we don't know what it's going to look like. So we don't have resources to sit on those live chats like you and I did to make sure that those people could get those responses. So having that AI assistant standing by ready to answer questions, maybe capturing somebody in a mental health moment, is going to be really important. And we know that mental health issues are only continuing to grow across the country.
Yeah. Well, let's shift gears and talk about the Champlain article and their partnership with Anthropic. That partnership centers on responsible AI. Kelly, what does that term mean to you?
It's one that strikes me. I know that there's been a lot of debate about bias in AI and making sure that you can use it responsibly. I think sometimes we really underestimate our own bias and then we start to apply it to AI. So using it responsibly, making sure that we're not ripping off artists' work, making sure we're not ripping off other people's written word is really important. So I put those in the categories of responsible use of AI. I think it's important that we understand that, bias and racism are things that are really human concepts and not felt as much in the AI space.
Yeah. Do you think that colleges can balance innovation with this need and desire for ethics, transparency, and trust, which, good needs and desires, right? But where is that balance?
Oh, it's tricky. And I think that we've been trying to deal with that since way before the advent of AI.
That's true.
And I think that we just have to continually work on it, understand that problems exist and actually facing them. Unfortunately, we like to bury things under a lot of covers in all sorts of places. So making sure that as these issues come up, we address them, we're more public with them. I've done a lot of work in cybersecurity, and we used to have that problem in the cybersecurity realm as well, where people weren't open when they had an attack. They weren't open when their campus was victim to any sort of cyber attack because they felt it made them look bad in the space. And since we weren't openly sharing as a community and as an industry, we all fell victim to it. So I think it's really important that as we come across all of these AI issues as well, we don't do what we did before, that we're more open with each other, more sharing with each other, so that as these ethics issues come up, more will come up as AI grows, that we can just be honest with each other and honest with the community as a whole and make sure we tackle them together.
Yeah. So element 451 is, at the center of recruitment and student engagement. And in your role, you get to work with those early adopters and help them think about their systems and their integrations with AI. What are some of the ways that you've seen the customers evolve, AI into a time-saving tool, into actually something that's maybe building trust with students? Because we focused a lot of this conversation on, I think, the resource side of it. But if the trust isn't there, it's not going to be used.
Yeah, and I think what's been really interesting in the market is I keep bringing up FUD, but there's a lot of that. It's funny. The first time I implemented an e-commerce system was in 2007. And at that time it was, nobody's ever going to trust this system. Nobody will ever pay for tuition online. And that was the statement that was made by the bursar I worked with at the time. As millions of dollars rolled in, we're like, hey, I think it's going to be okay. And we're seeing similar feedback to AI. So as we roll out these AI agents, it's like nobody's going to actually interact with them. We won't have the level of interaction that you're expecting. And the aha moment as these schools realize that these conversations are coming in, students are getting the help that they need, and our staff can now focus on the more pertinent matters that need a really human element to work with those students. that's that fun aha moment that's happening with the schools that we work with. And I see we in the student panels that you did earlier this year, they're cool with it, right? They don't have that level of uncertainty that we do in our generation of being like, oh, I don't know if I want to interact with that type of. They're cool with it. They know it's AI. They aren't being tricked. There's not any question about what they're interacting with. So that's been really fun to see that shift, especially in pre-sales, to being like, oh, I don't know about AI. I don't think that's something that we want to use, to the full, oh, they've saved me 184,000 minutes right now of my staff's time. That's pretty cool. So yeah, that shift has been really interesting to watch over the past 2 years.
I was going to bring that student panel up too, because it's interesting when you ask someone directly, like, would you rather interact with human or AI? Like 9 times out of 10, people say human, right? Like, but like what, of course, 9 times out of 10, people are going to say human. I actually think we're asking the wrong question. And I was going back and forth with some folks on LinkedIn around this a couple weeks ago. I don't think the question should be, would you rather interact with human or AI? It should be, would you rather get your questions answered when you actually have the question and you need the answer? Versus, do you want to wait until Monday morning at 9 a.m. because Mary is in the office at that time?
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally. Would you like to step in the queue, pull your number from the deli line, and wait until we can slice your mortadella? No, I'd like to get my question answered right now, actually. Yeah, I think that we are asking the wrong question, and try out the AI assistant. You might like it.
Exactly. So, all right, let's put our predicting hats on. What's one part of the student experience that hasn't been touched by AI yet, but you think maybe will be within the next year?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. Don't know what part of the student experience hasn't been touched by AI yet, Matt.
Fair answer. If it hasn't yet, it probably is going to be. Hey, that's it right there. Awesome. Well, Kelly, it was so nice to catch up with you today. And listeners, Kelly is going to be at the AI show and ASU+GSV Summit in San Diego, as we mentioned at the top of the show, as will Enrollify and Element 451. So if you are in the San Diego area or you're attending that show yourself, we would love to see you. We've got a number of our creators on the floor, and they would love to interview you, pull you in for a 10-minute little podcast. If you're interested, don't hesitate to reach out to me in advance. I can help you get that scheduled, but otherwise just pop by the booth and say hello. We've got some really great team members there, including Kelly, of course, who are going to be showcasing some of Element 451's latest and greatest when it comes to all things AI. All right, well, that wraps us up for another episode of The Pulse. We'll be back in your earbuds next Monday morning. Bye-bye. The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.